of the people who participated had sex within, like, the 4 years was on the, later
The far
side.
end, yeah.
Bush then put in another, several millions of dollars to fund abstinence
Yeah.
only. And so but most schools that were paying attention, you're right. They said, okay,
They
obviously,
realized.
I think we need to give teenagers information, which is pretty amazing in the year that is now, that's a radical thought. To give
Yeah.
teenagers real information. And
It's strange that that's what they're not doing. It's not like they're not encouraging them to have sex. It's just straight it's information. Yeah, that's...
yeah. Well, I think we're
almost
really,
surreal.
I think adults and parents are real victims to fear, because you're,
Yes.
I know
That's
that for my
a
own
very big
kids,
part of it.
I swear as soon as my kid came out,
Yeah.
now I just want to make sure she doesn't die. It's like, that's what you think about all,
So
oh my God,
basic.
she lived another day. That's
Yeah.
so great. What can I do to keep that happening? But I think that, that idea of, this fear that teenagers can't make choices. And
Yeah.
so what we're doing is we're preventing,
Making the choices
we're not
for
giving them the
them.
chances to make the choices. We're shutting out opportunities. Things are getting more academic and less experiential in education. We're over-programming our kids so that they have little time to actually just experience life. And now failing is an A- or a B+.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that just seeps into the marrow of a young person. And then
Exactly.
we basically don't give them any information because we're scared they're going to make the wrong choices with that information. And
Yeah.
it's really, kind of feels like being hobbled, I would think. You're kind of stuck.
Well, exactly, because you can get no information and still make the wrong choice, but then you have horrible consequences because you had no information
That's
when
such
you're
a
making this bad choice.
Exactly. And how many people do you know that have been in that situation?
I mean, it's like any teen. I personally probably know more people than some, but I think any teen knows one of their girlfriends or someone else who's been in a situation with the direct consequences, whether it be for sex ed, pregnancy, dealing with trying to go behind their parents' back to
Right.
get contraception because
Right.
they don't have the support, or I mean, it's really intense. You don't think, and actually in our own town there's been a lot of more girls recently, I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but have actually had the babies too. There's been younger girls who are having, and also I want to say really quickly, just for our viewers, keep in mind some of this, you might say, like, if there's conservative people watching, yes, it's liberal, but I feel like as a teen, it's not, I mean, it's political, but it's very personal. It's not, I'm not saying this because of any agenda or anything. It's just,
Right.
this is how, I'm just talking about the direct effects on teens.
Right.
And it's not, oh, like, they shouldn't pass a law. It's like, no, but I'm feeling the direct effects of, for example, the abstinence only. Not me personally, I'm at a private school, but my friends have abstinence only education. And one of my good girlfriends was telling me about how scared it makes her feel, because it's like they literally were basically, they were so encouraging kids to take promise rings and things like that.
Yeah.
And it really freaked her out because they were almost forcing it on kids who didn't feel comfortable doing that.
Right.
Which is weird. I don't know. Anyway. So
Well,
it's
and
just,
what you're talking about is exactly what that does, is then you are actually planting the seeds for guilt and shame.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point.
And that's what...
Sorry about the fly.
There's a fly flying around.
There's a fly in the room.
That's why I'm flailing around. So what the whole goal, at least for me, is to help to listen to teenagers, but also get other people to listen to teenagers and figure out, let's figure out where you are, where do you want to be, and then let's navigate what are some of the obstacles, not what should you do, but based on my experience of having the same conversation for 20 years, here are some things I've seen that could hold you up. And let's be just as ready for those as you might be for an exam.
Yeah.
Or
that's a
why
good
not
way to
think?
deal with it.
You wouldn't walk into an essay exam and not have any idea what you think the question might be. But I just feel like we're setting young people up to walk into social or more dangerous situations without even any kind of a plan. And it doesn't have to be a very formal plan, but again, how do I avoid regret? And the whole, I feel like trying to make an I feel like when you talk about hookups and pot, I think are really similar in that they're really examples of how the conversations that so many people have are so full of judgment. It's either good or bad, and we're so
Yeah.
busy saying why they're good and why they're bad
Yeah.
that there's never room for just some real meaningful conversation. And so you never really get anywhere except to decide, you know,
Well,
a
it's
pot is
judging
really amazing because it's natural and it's organic and it's here for us to enjoy, or the other side, you know, don't smoke or the gateway will suck you into a vortex of dropping out of school and you'll go to prison and you'll die,
Yeah.
you know? And that's kind of an extreme example. But you know what I mean?
The point is, it's the judgments.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
completely.
like, there's all these education and all these educators, and then you get people coming in who are saying things that are judgments of whether it be drugs, alcohol, or sex, specifically those three things. And what happens is when they make the judgments, the kids have their own judgments, and instead of getting information, they're just hearing judgments that they already know adults are making.
Right,
And they just go
exactly.
right against it.
Right. Or, yeah, exactly. They go right against it.
Because there's it's like, why would you change your mind just hearing the same thing of how it's bad?
Right.
You need to hear facts about what it does to you physically.
Right.
What can happen, you know, I mean, which
And-
is exactly what you tell kids.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
the effects emotionally. How do you,
Yeah,
you know,
very
so
big part of it.
It just gets, you can get so stuck.
And kind of on that question, might as well start with the nitty gritty of it. What do you see as some of the problems? We'll start out with drinking before the drugs. But what do you see as some of the problems or the biggest problem with underage drinking? In your experience, what have you seen?
Yeah, and again, most of this, I mean, obviously some of this is opinion, but what I comes from just what I'm seeing and what I hear about, and what I think is interesting is that when we talk about, you know, and I do all the neurobiology with, you know, young people in my drug education workshops, and really just talk about the facts of, you know, what does each category of drug do inside the brain, and what does your brain look like when you're doing this. But when I think about underage drinking, and I'm not saying that there is definitely an impact on especially your age group's brain development and alcohol. That's very true. And of equal importance, and maybe perhaps with some people even more so, are what concerns me with underage drinking are the decisions that young people make when they're wasted. And so that to me is what concerns me the most, or just the, you know, the amazing, you know, young woman that we talked about before, who either is, her academic training is for intellectual assertiveness and for academic success.
Yeah.
What you do is you please authority and you figure out what the rest of the herd is doing and you do it a little bit better. Okay, that recipe sucks for personal success, because in a situation where you are trying to find joy instead of regret, you do not necessarily, you want to figure out, you want to ignore the herd, and you certainly do not want to please anything or person that you feel has more power than you do in that moment.
Exactly.
And that same young woman who feels sort of sucked into, which is a whole nother setup around drinking, of why I think so many young people are drinking and drinking as much as they are. That same young woman ends up, you know, underneath some guy with, you know, her pants around her ankles and trying to figure out how she got there. And that's what concerns me most graphically about underage drinking. And
no,
also just the staggering, like what the last survey I checked out that I trust, from sources that I trust, are about 73% of young people, and that's from the ages of 15 to 21, say that, you know, after 2 or 3 drinks, they don't use a condom.
Yeah. That's so scary.
That's just as scary as drunk driving. You know, the consequences
can be just as bad or worse depending on the type of, you know, situation you get into.
Right. And again, I'm so careful in my workshops to make it really clear that I'm not saying, and I know you know this because you've been in some of my workshops, but I'm not saying don't have sex. I am absolutely not saying that. I'm also not saying, you know, after this show, let's go tell 15 people to go have sex. I'm not saying that either, but, and I'm not telling people to not do drugs. What I'm saying is the incident I see, how many of these decisions might end in regret. That's what it's all about. If you have decided to have sex, I mean, go for it.
Yeah, and like you said, she gives the example, if you want to have sex with a lot of people at a party and you're